They were preparing to celebrate their 30th wedding anniversary in style. 30 years together. That was no small feat. Dahlia Everidge had always believed that fate had been kind to her. The greatest fortune in her life, she felt, was meeting Marcus. She truly got lucky. He was a dependable, smart, and driven man. He absolutely adored his wife and daughters, doing everything to ensure their happiness. And the number of women who had envied Dahlia over the years was countless. Some had tried everything to steal her husband, but none of them ever succeeded. He loved his wife more than life itself, and still confessed his love to her to this very day. Welcome to my channel. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Now, let's jump back into my story. I'm sure you'll love it if you keep listening till the end. Dahlia smiled, thinking of her husband as she slowly stirred the pancake batter in a large bowl. The kitchen door opened, and her younger daughter Zara walked in. "Mom, it's only 5 o'clock in the morning. What are you doing up before the sun?" "Couldn't sleep, sweetie," Dahlia said, smiling at her daughter. "I'm too excited about the surprise for your dad. I really didn't think I'd convince Aunt Clara to come visit us." "Mom, how long have she and Dad been feuding?" "About 20 years, 24 to be precise," Dahlia replied. "You weren't even born yet." "Wow, Aunt Clara sure holds a grudge," Zara said, surprised. "They argued over something small, right? Someone said the wrong thing to someone else." "Well, it depends on how you look at it, honey," her mother sighed. "Clara was dating your father's friend back then, and she really loved him. But he met another girl and liked her a lot. He just couldn't choose. Your father went and blurted out that if he were in his friend's shoes, he wouldn't choose Clara. He'd pick the other girl." "Mom, you really think Dad's words were the deciding factor?" "Probably not," her mother conceded. "But his friend chose the other girl, not Clara. We don't know how things would have turned out if your father had praised Clara and said she was better suited for family life, so she took it hard. She must have really loved that man. She never got married and lives alone." "That's sad," Zara said. "I feel bad for Aunt Clara, but it's great that she finally agreed to come. Maybe she and Dad can make up. Maybe he can introduce her to someone." "Your dad kept it all inside, but he was terribly upset about the argument. For the first 3 years, he drove to see her, wrote and called. He tried everything to beg for forgiveness. Then he just gave up. But now they'll make up, and everyone will be happy." In response, her mother gave a sad, wry smile. Noticing the expression on her face, Zara looked puzzled. "Mom, I don't get it. Aren't you happy?" "I'm very happy for your dad and Clara, but that's not our only problem. If the other one could be fixed, I would be truly happy and wouldn't wish for anything else." She looked at her daughter apologetically. Zara realized what her mother was referring to and quietly asked, "Are you talking about grandchildren?" "Who else would I be talking about?" Dahlia said, her face falling. "Simone is almost 30. She's been married for 8 years, and you've been living with your husband for 4 years, and neither of you has had a pregnancy. Something just isn't right here." Dahlia had touched on a deeply painful subject for the family. Both her daughters were happily married, but no matter how hard they tried to have children, neither could conceive. Numerous tests confirmed that both young women and their husbands were perfectly healthy. The doctors just threw up their hands and said it wasn't the right time, they just had to wait. But Dahlia had her own private theory, which she kept a strict secret. The more she thought about it, the more serious her desire became to intervene. The sound of bare feet shuffling on the floor was heard, and a sleepy Simone, Dahlia, and Marcus's older daughter entered the kitchen. "What are you two jabbering about?" she asked, turning on the electric kettle. "Simone, honey, you should have slept in," her mother said. "You didn't get enough sleep, did you? You arrived so late." "Mom, I didn't drive over 250 miles just to sleep here," Simone replied. "I'll sleep when I get home. You need to tell me why you dragged Zara and me here so urgently and wouldn't explain anything over the phone." "Simone, I know you. If I'd explained, you wouldn't have come, and this is serious." Dahlia began frying the pancakes while explaining to Simone why she had called her daughters, who lived in different states, to come home for a couple of days. "Simone, I want to get Dad an original anniversary gift, something that will last a lifetime. I want you and Zara to brainstorm some ideas for me." "You've got to be kidding, Mom," Simone exclaimed. "We could have discussed that on the phone." "Sweetie, it's not just about the gift. We're also going to check out venues, restaurants, and bars to see where to rent a space. We need to plan the program for the anniversary, and you're going to help me pick out a beautiful dress. I planned this especially while Dad is out of town. I want him to know nothing about our plans." "Mom's right," Zara agreed. "There will be a lot of guests. We need to thoroughly plan everything to make sure everyone is happy. But most of all, we want to surprise Dad with a gift, if we can come up with something clever enough." She looked hopefully at her older sister, who was the creative one and a true generator of ideas. Over their early breakfast, the family discussed gift options, but everything seemed too weak or common. Dahlia absolutely wanted to give her husband something truly unexpected and impressive. Around noon, the mother and daughters went to the mall to choose an outfit for Dahlia. They picked out a beautiful lilac floor-length gown and matching stiletto heels. Well, Dahlia was only 55. She was still very confident in the highest, thinnest heels. "Now for the venues," Dahlia commanded. "Keep your eyes open and pick the best one." They left the mall and walked down the street. Passing a magazine stand, Simone suddenly stopped. She was intently looking at the cover of a book about an old royal family, featuring a photo of the monarch's wedding. Simone's eyes lit up. An idea struck her. All she had to do was tell her family. "Listen," she said to her sister and mother, "we'll give Dad a film about his ancestors' weddings. I'm sure it will be absolutely mind-blowing and original. I doubt anyone has ever given him anything like that." Zara instantly latched onto the idea. "Exactly, and not just ancestors. It would be great if we could find photos of at least 5 weddings from the grandparents and great-grandparents, so we'll include Mom and Dad's wedding and mine and Simone's too." Everyone loved the idea. Returning home, they began searching for everything they had regarding the weddings of their closest relatives. They found a good bit, but everything needed to be organized. "I'll take the film," Simone announced. "My husband and I will handle everything. You just need to send me the material. Email me everything you find." Dahlia was pleased that she and her daughters had accomplished so much in a single day. They had bought her outfit, booked the venue, come up with the idea for an original gift, and gathered plenty of photos and videos for the film. "Girls, who wants to take a road trip with me?" she asked mysteriously, looking at her daughters as they sat drinking tea after a long day. "Where?" the tired Simone asked without much enthusiasm. "To the remote town where your father's parents lived." The mother smiled mysteriously. "The house is really old, built by your great-grandfather, so I don't know if it's still standing." "And why do you care about it now?" Simone wondered. "I want to check it out," her mother replied, looking away. "If the house is still intact, maybe some old photographs survive there, maybe even wedding pictures." The daughters exchanged glances. Zara looked at her mother in disbelief. "Are you serious, Mom? It's over 600 miles from here, and there's probably nothing left of the house anyway." "I see," Dahlia sighed. "I guess I'll have to go alone." "Mom, don't be ridiculous. You'll just waste your time," Simone said, annoyed. A day later, the daughters drove back home. Marcus was due back from his business trip in 5 days. Dahlia opened a map online and was relieved to see that her husband's old rural hometown was still marked. She decisively booked a round-trip flight to the city nearest the town and began packing. She planned to be back before her husband arrived. If she found wedding photos of Marcus's relatives in the old house, that would be great. But her true goal was not the photos at all. It was the old, time-blackened icon with a sorrowful face that had helped her more than 30 years ago. Dahlia wanted to stand before that icon again. She desperately needed to ask the figure on it for something. The next morning, she stepped off the plane. Time was short, so she took a taxi. 4 hours later, the car delivered her to the town. If not for the lush greenery, the fragrant lilac and wild rose bushes, the town would have made a depressing impression. Yards overgrown with tall grass, the outskirts of the town circled by hawks, and a silence unfamiliar to a city dweller, all suggested that life here was fading away. "If you're not staying long, I can wait for you," the taxi driver unexpectedly offered. "I'll be about 2 hours, no more," Dahlia replied gratefully. "I will pay you for your wait. Please, wait for me." She was happy about the driver's offer. She was afraid to be alone in this place. Somewhere down the street, a dog lazily barked, and an old man walked onto the road. He slowly made his way toward the arrivals. "Well, hello there," the old man greeted Dahlia, watching her try to open the gate. "Don't recognize you. Whose kin are you?" "I'm Marcus Everidge's wife," the woman replied. "His grandparents lived in this house. Then his parents lived here until they moved to the city. Do you remember them?" "How could I not remember? I remember all our folks," the old man answered. "Why did you come here? Did you decide to sell the house?" "We have plenty of houses for sale in town, but no buyers." "I just decided to see what condition the house is in. Maybe we could come here to relax in the summer," Dahlia quickly improvised. The old man slowly helped her manage the rusted latch on the gate and pushed it open. "You should go see Ms. Etta May, the neighbor," he said, nodding toward the nearest house. "Ask her for a scythe and I'll clear a path to the door for you." Dahlia went into the neighboring yard and realized people lived there. Chickens walked around the yard, and a black cat sat on the fence. The woman knocked on the door and heard shuffling steps approaching. A stout, elderly woman stood on the threshold. She looked at Dahlia in surprise. "Bless my soul!" the old woman exclaimed, clasping her hands. "I thought I was seeing things. First, a car arrived, then some voices, and it turns out there are actually people here." "Excuse me, please," the uninvited guest smiled. "I'm your neighbor. The Everidge family are my husband's relatives. I wanted to ask if I could borrow a scythe to clear some grass so I can reach the house door." "Well, there it is by the fence," the old woman nodded at the scythe. "Come see me later when you have time. I've got something to discuss with you." Dahlia was surprised, but promised to stop by. The old man turned out to be surprisingly strong and agile. In a few minutes he had cleared a wide path from the gate right up to the doorstep of the house. While he was mowing, Dahlia slipped through the tall grass to the window, peered in, and froze in shock. At the table, inside the locked house, sat a small, white-haired old man, white as a sheet. Dahlia recoiled from the window in terror. The old man, who was mowing the grass in the yard, chuckled slyly. "Don't be scared. Did you think you saw a person?" He looked closely at Dahlia. "That's the house spirit. He protects the home. If he appeared to you as a person, it means he accepted you as one of his own. He won't hurt you. Go on in and do what you planned. He won't get in your way." Dahlia didn't know whether to believe the old man or not, but she had no choice. She thanked him for his help and easily opened the door. Thankfully, there was no lock or bolt on it. She walked into the house. It smelled of dust and something stale. No one was at the table anymore. She cautiously went to the room where the icon, the reason for her trip, had once hung. But the room was empty. She hurried through all the spaces and finally saw the sorrowful face in the farthest, tiniest closet. It seemed even sadder than before. The face was barely visible on the darkened, almost black wood, but it radiated such kindness and power that she immediately knew it would help. She fell to her knees and wept. "Forgive me. Forgive me for all the bad things I've done in my life. Forgive me my heavy sins, even the ones I've long forgotten. But I beg you, spare my girls. Help them know the joy of motherhood. Help them as you once helped me." Then a searing thought struck her. It had helped her, yet she hadn't even said thank you. Tears streamed down her face again. "Forgive me, the ungrateful one. Forgive me." After that, there were only tears, uncontrollable, bitter tears that brought relief. They seemed to cleanse her, taking away everything bad and opening up a new, joyful future. She distinctly felt that she had been heard and realized she hadn't come for nothing. She felt such lightness in her soul that there was no doubt left. She was not alone here. She had been comforted and promised that what she had asked for would be granted. Now, Dahlia knew, you must never forget kindness. You must never forget to be grateful for the good things we receive in life. Dahlia got up from her knees and remembered she needed to look for photos. She went through all the rooms, checked all the cabinets and shelves, but there were no photographs anywhere. Then she remembered the old neighbor who had asked her to stop by. A couple of minutes later, she was in Ms. Etta May's yard. "You came," the old woman said, seeing her. "Come inside. I have something to give you." When they went into the house, the old woman pulled a burlap sack from a cupboard and explained, "You folks haven't been here for close to 25 years, but mail kept coming for about 15 years after all your husband's kin left the house. When everything couldn't fit in the mailbox anymore, I started putting all your mail in this sack. There were important letters in there. I saved everything. Don't throw it away right off. Read it first." It seemed to Dahlia that the old woman was hinting at something. She shook off the thought, but was touched by her neighbor's care. She remembered she had a chocolate bar in her purse and decided to thank the old woman for her kindness, even with just that. The old woman broke into a contented smile. "Thank you. I haven't had chocolate in years," she said, carefully taking the bar. "The store truck doesn't bring chocolate here. Who would buy it? It's so expensive." Thanking the old woman, Dahlia carried the sack back to her house. There, she dumped its contents onto the table, sorted the letters, and put them in a packet. She stacked the newspapers and magazines neatly on the table. At the last minute, she remembered the icon and decided to take it with her. She put it in another bag and hurried to the waiting taxi driver. Her return flight was the next day. Dahlia asked the driver to take her to a hotel. After showering and having dinner at a local restaurant, she lay down to rest, but remembered the letters. To avoid carrying them around, she decided to look at them right away. She was sure nothing important could be in there. She began opening the envelopes. The letters were from Marcus's relatives, people Dahlia had never heard of. She opened the next envelope. Unlike the previous ones, this one was addressed to her husband, Marcus. A photograph fell out. The woman picked it up and froze. She thought she was looking at her husband, but on the back of the photo was written, "Your son, Devin, 22 years old." She looked at the date it was sent and realized this Devin was 2 years older than their eldest daughter, Simone. That meant he was 31 now. Dahlia started reading the letter, and the further she read, the more terrified she became. From the very first lines, it was clear that the woman writing to Marcus was the one who had borne him a son. The boy had been born with a serious illness. The woman reminded Marcus that as soon as the child was born, she had written to him many times about the baby's health problems and asked him for help, but he never responded. The woman described in detail how hard it was for her to raise and treat the child alone, how they went hungry and moved from place to place after their old country house burned down. But the most frightening part was at the end. The woman wrote, "Don't hope, Marcus, that all this will just blow over. You will have to pay for everything. You will pay the highest price for your heartlessness. Your bloodline will never continue. You will not have any more sons. And if you have daughters, they will never have children of their own. You, Marcus, are to blame for this. This is the price for your lack of love for your own son. You and your daughters will experience the same pain that my child and I had to endure." A stunned Dahlia was utterly devastated by what she had learned from that letter. A day later, she was home, bringing all the letters with her. Her mood was terrible. She was waiting for her husband to return from his trip. Finally, he returned, cheerful and pleased with a successful trip and a promising new contract he had secured with business partners. All Marcus's thoughts were focused on the upcoming anniversary celebration. "You won't believe the amazing gift waiting for you," her husband announced with a smile, unpacking his suitcase. "I've never given you anything like it, but you'll have to wait. I'll give it to you at the party." He looked closely at his wife's face and asked anxiously, "Honey, why do you look so down? Did something happen?" "It's a long talk, Marcus. Go take a shower. We'll talk tomorrow. I don't feel so good." Dahlia was trying to stay strong, but she still didn't know if she should bring up the topic of her husband's son now or wait until after the anniversary celebration. Her head was spinning, and she had no one to consult. She didn't want to drag her daughters into this ugly family history. Marcus was long asleep, but Dahlia couldn't sleep. She got up and went to the room where the icon she had brought from the country town now stood on one of the bookshelves. She just sat opposite it, staring at it, agonizing over what to do next. Suddenly the solution came. She would find this young man and try to right the wrong. She would do everything to find out if Devin was indeed Marcus's son, as his mother claimed in the letter. If he was his son, she would try to reconcile them. Here, she was completely on the side of the woman whose letter she had almost memorized. A father must acknowledge his child. All that remained was to find Marcus's unacknowledged son and establish contact with him. She decided to hire a private investigator and was sitting in a private agency the very next morning. "Please come in." A fit young man invited her into his office. Once Dahlia was settled in the chair, he continued, "I've been assigned your case. I specialize in finding people. Let's start with introductions. My name is Julian Vance. Now, Ms. Everidge, I'd like to see all the documents and letters you have concerning this matter." "Unfortunately, I don't have many documents, only a copy of my husband's ID and a letter from a woman who claims she had his son. His name is Devin. I don't know his last name, but the envelope has the woman's return address and last name." "All of that is very important," Julian said, "and it will definitely come in handy for my work. Ms. Everidge, do you know of anyone who might be aware of the events? Any relatives, neighbors, any clue is important. I can give you the address of the town where my husband lived. There are very few people left there, but they are all old-timers. Those people might know a lot." After discussing all the search details with the detective, Dahlia asked him, "Julian, I promise you a bonus. Not a very big one. I'm not great with money right now, but I would be very grateful if you could find Devin or his mother by July 15th. If you don't mind me asking, Ms. Everidge, what's happening on July 15th? Julian smiled. "It's no secret," the woman readily replied. "That's the day we celebrate our 30th wedding anniversary with my husband. We'll have a lot of guests at the party. I would really like my husband's son and his mother to be among them." The young detective was touched by this confession. In his line of work, nobility and kindness were not often encountered. "Ms. Everidge, I promise I will do everything humanly possible. You have a good cause in mind, and I sincerely hope everything works out for you. I promise not to spare any time or effort." That same evening, Julian flew to the same city Dahlia had recently flown to, and he had his first results the very next day. The young, yet quite experienced and energetic detective quickly covered the entire small town where Dahlia had recently been. It turned out that people lived in 12 different households there. All of them were quite elderly, but many clearly remembered the Everidge family, Marcus, and even his numerous past relationships. But the one who told Julian the most was Ms. Etta May, the old woman from whom Dahlia had borrowed the scythe. If Dahlia hadn't been in such a hurry to leave the town, she could have heard much of it herself. "Ms. Etta May," Julian said, looking gratefully at the old woman after their 2-hour conversation. "I understand everything about Marcus and his girlfriend Denise. Now I just need to find her and their son. Where do you think they might be living now?" "Why, think about it," the old woman wondered. "They live in the next town over, just like ours. Only we have only old folks here, and that town has a few young people. They help a beekeeper with his apiary there, and Devin works for him too." Julian couldn't believe his luck. Finding the person you're looking for on the very first day, that's something you only dream of. Ms. Etta May looked out the window. "It's getting dark already. You'd better go to that town tomorrow. Stay here tonight, sleep at my place." "But you said the town is close," Julian smiled. "I just need to confirm they are there. I can drive over quickly and head straight back to the city from there." "The town is close, but the area here isn't simple," the old woman said, looking significantly at the young man. "This place has been full of conjurers and healers for centuries. We had healers in our town. They cured people, found lost livestock, and could even call for rain. We still have one such person left today. But that town, where Denise and her son live now, is nothing but conjurers. You can imagine the kind of things they do. Their children do the same." Julian didn't believe in conjurers, healers, or any other unknown force. But he didn't mind listening to the old woman's stories. After all, it was folklore. so he willingly kept the conversation going. "So, is Denise a conjurer too?" he asked the old hostess with a smile. "Don't you grin at me," the old woman said. "When Devon was little, she wore herself out going from hospital to hospital with him, but the doctors couldn't help them. So she went to our healers, but they all said in one voice that his sickness was too strong. They couldn't help him. That's when she decided to go to the town of the conjurers. They healed Devon there. He was about 17 then, and she stayed with him in that town. If he starts feeling bad, she goes back to the conjurers. They use herbs and incantations to ease his pain." Julian looked out the window thoughtfully. It was already dusk, and then he noticed a shadow in the yard of the neighboring house, the one where the Everidges had once lived. Someone was clearly moving among the bushes. "Ms. Etta May, does anyone live in the house next door?" he asked the old woman in surprise. She shook her head and smirked. "No one lives there. I told you, our town is unusual. If you're scared here, don't even think about going to the other town." And even though Julian didn't believe in any of this nonsense, he decided to stay the night with the hospitable Ms. Etta May. He felt safer next to her. The next morning, after a simple country breakfast, he took a pile of treats out of his car for the old woman. He knew how much country folks appreciated kindness. He thanked her wholeheartedly for her help and drove to the town where, according to Ms. Etta May, nothing but conjurers lived. The towns were very close to each other, so Julian arrived very quickly. He stopped his car at the first house, looked around, and listened. He felt a heavy gaze on his back. He slowly turned and met the eyes of a young, bearded man. He was standing behind the fence of the neighboring yard, staring intently at the stranger. "Hello," Julian smiled broadly. "I'm looking for Denise Talbot. Could you tell me where her house is?" "What do you want her or Devon for?" the bearded man asked sternly. "If you need help, I can offer some." "No," Julian smiled. "I need to talk to Denise." "So, where's her house?" The bearded man pointed toward a small house on a hill, and Julian walked there, leaving his car in the shade of a large oak tree. He walked and wondered what kind of help the bearded man was offering. Julian saw Denise from afar. Ms. Etta May had said that Denise had bright red hair from a young age. She said that even though she was now over 50, her hair had not changed color. Not a single gray hair. This greatly surprised Miss Etta May. The old woman even suggested that it was the result of a conjuring spell. Julian approached the gate and greeted her loudly. Denise, working in the garden beds, straightened up and walked toward Julian. She stopped at the gate and silently stared at him. Julian felt uncomfortable. "Hello again," Julian greeted the hostess. "If I'm not mistaken, you're Denise." "You're not mistaken," the woman replied. "What do you need?" "I wanted to talk to you," Julian began. For the first time in years of working, he realized that standard tactics wouldn't work here, and he felt flustered. "Well, go on, talk." The woman looked at him with a smirk. "I'm a private detective. I've been hired to find out something about your son. Could we go inside? It's very hot out here." Julian needed to get into Denise's house at any cost. One of the tasks he had to perform for Dahlia was to obtain a biological sample from Devon for a DNA test. Dahlia somehow immediately believed that every word in Denise's letter was the incriminating truth. She wanted to present the test result to her husband. She was certain he was Devon's father. Denise looked closely at Julian. "Fine, come in if it's hot." They went into the coolness of the old house. The hostess gestured to the guest to sit at the table, poured him a glass of cold iced tea, and set it in front of him. "All right, tell me what you need," Denise said impatiently. "I don't have time to stand around talking. I need to finish up the garden before the sun gets too high." "Mom, who are you talking to out there?" a man's voice called from the back room. "We have a guest," the mother called back. "Come see for yourself." "That's Devon," the detective realized. "I need to exchange a few words with him." Denise turned toward the room where her son was. "Son, do you need help, or can you walk by yourself?" I'm coming." A tall and very thin, black-haired man with a beard appeared in the doorway. Julian recognized him immediately. It was Devin. Dahlia had shown him the photograph of Devin at 22. Though in that photo, the young man was clean-shaven. Furthermore, he looked very much like his client's husband. Dahlia had given Julian photographs of Marcus in his youth and now. The resemblance was so strong that it inevitably led to the conclusion that the people in the photo were at least related to Devin. Shuffling slowly, the young man approached the table and slumped heavily onto the stool. "Good afternoon," the detective smiled at him. "I'm Julian. I really need to discuss a sensitive topic with you. If you feel very uncomfortable, just say so and we'll stop." Julian took a deep breath, and since he couldn't think of a delicate approach, he blurted it out. "Marcus Everidge is having a big celebration soon. He wants you to be there too." Mother and son exchanged glances. "Why would he?" Denise narrowed her eyes. "And why didn't he write or come himself?" Julian had to improvise on the spot. "Marcus asked me to find both of you. He doesn't know how to do this, and it's routine work for me. As for the invitation to his party, I'm extending it on my own initiative. Although Marcus planned to do it personally since I found you, I decided there's no need to wait. I thought you would be happy." "He was trash then, and he's trash now," Denise chuckled bitterly. "He could at least ask how his son is feeling." She looked tenderly at Devin, then turned her gaze back to Julian. "You can see for yourself my boy can barely walk." "How can that be?" the detective asked in confusion. "I made some inquiries, and people told me that people in this town cured Devin when he was 17. Isn't that right?" "There are people here who help my son deal with his illness," Denise said. "But they can only help for a while, and then the sickness returns." "And what did the doctors say?" Julian asked. "Has Devin been examined recently?" "Don't make me laugh," Denise waved him off. "Devin was only 18 months old when the doctor said his illness was incurable." "And you haven't seen a doctor since then?" the detective asked, surprised. "We have," Denise said, "but they all just repeated the same thing. Once my son turned 6 years old, I stopped dragging him to doctors. I looked for healers in the country towns. I only found people in this town who could help him, even if only for a time. He's been feeling bad for 3 days now. If he doesn't feel better in a couple of days, we'll go back to the local folk worker." "Denise, do you have any documents that state Devin's diagnosis?" the detective asked. "Yes, I think I do," the woman replied, surprised. "Why do you ask?" "I'll look at it. Maybe I can find a doctor who specifically treats this disease." Denise had long lost hope of curing her son, but she tried not to miss any opportunity to do so. Even now, she looked at the strange guest and thought, what if he can help? She jumped up and quickly walked into the back room. She rustled through papers there. Soon, she emerged, holding a yellowed sheet of paper. She handed it to Julian. "Here you go." The young man took out his phone and took a picture, which greatly surprised the hosts. There was no cell service in their town. They knew about cell phones, of course, but had no idea of their capabilities. Julian understood there was nothing more for him to do here. All that was left was to get something for the DNA test. But nothing suitable was nearby. And then the now softened Denise offered him tea. Julian immediately accepted, hoping he could somehow manage to grab something. And his hopes were fulfilled. Denise poured tea for everyone and placed pastries on the table. And when Devin was distracted for a second, Julian swapped his half-eaten pastry for his own, biting into his in the same way, and slipped Devin's pastry into his pocket. He thought he would have to throw the pants away, but work was work. Thanking them for the tea, Julian promised to return and bid farewell to Denise and Devin. He had a flight that evening, and by morning he was reporting the results of his trip to an agitated Dahlia Everidge in the detective agency office. "Look," Julian spread the photos of Devin, printed from his phone, on the table in front of his client. "Imagine him without the beard. He's a spitting image of your Marcus." Dahlia agreed. "Julian, tell me, how is his attitude?" she asked. "Is he very angry or resentful toward his father?" "I wouldn't say so," the detective replied. "It seemed to me that he is quite seriously ill, and he doesn't have the strength to think about anything but his own health." "And Denise?" Dahlia asked. "How did she interact with you?" Julian sighed heavily. I feel sorry for her. A tormented, exhausted woman. You should see her hands. They're like a man's. She lives a hard life, but she keeps up a good front. She never once criticized or complained about anyone. She only blamed Marcus for not acknowledging his son. But look what she wrote in that letter, Dahlia reminded him, referring to the letter in which Denise wrote that Marcus's bloodline would end and his daughters would never have children. I think that was just a moment of desperation, Julian said. Denise seemed normal to me, not malicious. You're even somewhat alike. He paused. Oh, I almost forgot. He took a small packet from the small refrigerator in the far corner of the office, inside which lay a half-eaten pastry. He handed it to his client. This is for the DNA. Devin ate this pastry. If you want, I'll give you the phone number for the lab. They can do the analysis for you in one day. I want it, Dahlia said. She knew she would have to pay for the speed, but the uncertainty was too agonizing. She wanted to know the truth as soon as possible and find peace. And one more thing, Julian added, handing the woman a printed sheet of paper. If I understood correctly, Denise treated her son with medicine until he was ready for school, then became disillusioned with it and went to healers and conjurers. This sheet has Devin's diagnosis, which he was given as a child. My goodness, Dahlia exclaimed, surprised. So much has changed since then. Maybe the diagnosis was wrong back then. I agree. If the test confirms that Devin is Marcus's son, it makes sense to organize a full examination for him. That needs to be done to confirm the diagnosis and to understand if any new treatments for his illness have emerged over the years. Julian, you are such a good man. Dahlia couldn't help but praise him. Not only did you complete the job so quickly, but you also care about Devin. You brought the medical records. Thank you so much. Dahlia took a small envelope from her purse. This is the promised bonus. Sorry it's not much. Don't be silly, Ms. Everidge. The detective firmly refused the envelope. You've already paid the agency fee. My percentage is included there, so you don't owe me anything, and you'll need that money to treat Devin. Thank you again. Dahlia smiled and hurried to the lab. Her husband's biological material was already in her purse. Now the pastry half-eaten by Devin was there too. So, no later than tomorrow, she would know if her daughters had a half-brother. Dahlia was restless. Her husband was beginning to suspect she had health problems. She was behaving so strangely, talking little, looking at him reproachfully, as if she wanted to say something but didn't dare, and most importantly, disappearing for several hours a day without explanation. Today, Dahlia was expected at the lab at 10 o'clock to be given the DNA test result. She was very nervous. Of course, she was sincerely worried about Devin and about the fact that he and his mother had suffered so much in life. But she was even more worried about her childless daughters. She was sure that as soon as Denise forgave Marcus, the situation would change for the better for Simone and Zara. Finally, the test result was in her hands. It confirmed Marcus's paternity. Dahlia sighed in relief. All doubts were gone, and it was time to act. She took a taxi and was home soon. Her husband was watching his favorite football game. Dahlia turned off the TV. Read this. She shoved the test result into his hands. By her husband's bewildered face, she realized he didn't understand what she had given him. She had to help. Marcus, she said with indignation, this document confirms that you have a son. Tell me honestly, did you know about him? Honey, don't talk nonsense, her husband grimaced, annoyed, as if from a toothache. Where did you get that idea? Dahlia expected anything, but she didn't expect her husband to deny the obvious. The woman became furious. Maybe you're also going to say you don't know who Denise is. How do you know her? Marcus asked, surprised. Dahlia burst into tears, rushed into the room, retrieved the fateful letter that had started everything, and shoved it into her husband's hands. Read this and be ashamed. Marcus slowly began to read the letter. As his face darkened, his wife knew he was ashamed. The husband finished reading. Tell me honestly, Marcus, did you know you had a sick son? Dahlia, Denise and I had a complicated relationship. He began to justify himself. As soon as she got pregnant, she wouldn't leave me alone. She demanded that we get married, and I was only 20 years old." "Oh, you poor thing," Dahlia sneered. "And do you know that our girls are paying for your sins now? They don't have children because our family was punished for your unacknowledged son. Tell me, why didn't you help Denise treat him? Maybe something could have been done then if treatment had started right away." Marcus stood silently, ashamed. The shock was too great for him to understand what was happening and how to live his life from now on. But Dahlia knew all too well. "Here's the deal," she stated her decision harshly. "We have 2 weeks until our party. By then, you need to make it completely clear how we are going to live our lives from now on. If you don't change, there will be no party. I will cancel it." Dahlia was furious and could not calm down. She emotionally voiced everything she thought about her husband. Suddenly, her phone rang. It was her older daughter, Simone. "I'm listening," Dahlia answered loudly, still heated from the argument with her husband. "Mom," Simone asked, surprised, "why does your voice sound so hostile? Are you fighting with someone?" "Not with just someone," Dahlia replied, deciding she had nothing to hide. "With your own father." The woman decided her children had the right to know what kind of daddy they had. "I'm fighting with your father," she repeated. "Daughter, it's hard to believe, but he turned out to be a scoundrel." Tears welled up in Dahlia's voice. "Mom, what happened?" Simone was genuinely alarmed. Marcus snatched the phone from his wife. "Simone, please don't worry," he told his daughter. "Your mother and I just had a big disagreement. She'll calm down soon and call you back. Bye, sweetie." Marcus hung up and ran to the kitchen for water to calm his wife. But Dahlia felt faint. She turned pale, breathing quickly and intermittently. Marcus was genuinely frightened. "Honey, please calm down," he whispered, lifting his wife to carry her to the sofa. "I'll call an ambulance right now. I'll do everything exactly as you want, and everything will be fine. Believe me." By the time the paramedics arrived, Dahlia felt better. She realized that at her age, she shouldn't give in to her emotions. She decided that from now on, she would talk to her husband calmly. But woe to him if he tried to object. She decided she would gather her strength now, and they would talk. When the paramedics came up to the apartment, Dahlia felt quite well. They gave her a shot to improve her overall well-being and left. The woman continued to lie on the sofa, resting. She needed to put her thoughts and spirit in order. And suddenly, it dawned on her. She would send her husband to sleep in the small room tonight. There was a good sofa there, but more importantly, the icon stood on the bookshelf there. Let her husband stay near it and look at the sorrowful face. Maybe something would awaken in his soul, his conscience naturally. 15 minutes later, Marcus approached his wife with a cup of tea. "Honey, it's hot, just the way you like it, with cherry jam," he said softly. "Please drink it. I added some honey too. It's very good." "Marcus, I want you to tell me your plans for the next few days tomorrow morning. We need to get some things done. Tonight, please sleep in the room with the balcony." "Whatever you say, darling," her husband agreed obediently. "What should I fix you for dinner?" "I'll stick with tea," Dahlia replied. "Fine, but I have a huge favor to ask of you. Will you hear me out?" "Go ahead," Dahlia allowed. "I beg you not to discuss the topic related to Denise and Devin with the girls." "What?" Dahlia jumped up on the sofa. "Your son is 31 years old. All this time you haven't found the time or the strength to solve the problem, and now you want us to step away too? No way. You forced us to do what you should have done a long time ago. All right, just calm down, honey. If you don't need me, I'll go to bed. Good night." Despite all the turmoil, Dahlia spent the night peacefully. She slept soundly and sweetly, waking up refreshed and in high spirits. She couldn't figure out why she felt so good. She was just about to get up when her husband looked into the bedroom. "You're awake already?" He was happy. "Perfect. My pancakes will be ready any minute now. How do you feel? Is everything okay?" Dahlia didn't feel like pretending to be offended or angry, though she probably should have. Instead, she smiled at her husband. "How did you sleep?" "I barely slept all night, but my head feels so clear now. I guess it's because the balcony was open all night. I've made up my mind about everything. I'm surprised I didn't think of this right away. It's all so simple, so clear." Well, tell me what you decided, Dahlia invited. She was terrified that her view of the future wouldn't align with her husband's intentions. Marcus sat on the bed beside her and took her hands. Honey, life is complicated. Few people don't make mistakes. But last night, I realized that if you know you've made a mistake, you must have the courage to admit it and fix it. Dahlia didn't like generalities. She expected specifics from her husband. So, her husband announced guiltily, I'm starting to fix my mistakes today. I acknowledge my son, I'll take care of his health, I'll do everything to make amends to Denise, and I promise never to disappoint you again. Dahlia sighed in relief. Marcus, you have no idea how happy I am to hear that, she said. You read my mind. I also believe you should do that. Moreover, I am sure that if you do all this, we will have grandchildren. Marcus fed his wife breakfast and left the house. Dahlia didn't call him. She didn't want to distract him from the serious matters he had planned. Several days passed. Exactly 1 week remained until the 30th wedding anniversary celebration. Today, Simone and Zara arrived at their parents' house. Their husbands were still working and were scheduled to arrive the day before the celebration. That evening, a disgruntled Simone planned to have a serious talk with her mother and tell her that she couldn't demand their presence so abruptly. After all, she and Zara had husbands, jobs, and homes for goodness sake. Simone had thought of everything on her way to her parents' house, that someone was seriously ill, or they had decided to get divorced, or they had gotten into some trouble. But Dahlia beat Simone to it. She explained everything herself, not waiting for questions or disgruntled remarks. As soon as the girls unpacked their suitcases, their mother said, Girls, move it. Your father and some guests will be here in half an hour. We need to get the table set. Mom, Simone looked at Dahlia in confusion. Explain to me why you invited guests so early. What are they going to do here? What is there to worry about? The mother replied. You and Zara found things to do, and they will too. Mom, we're your family. We live here. Your father isn't bringing strangers here either, the mother said, visibly nervous. So, is he meeting Aunt Clara? Zara asked. My, you are impatient, Dahlia said, annoyed. You should be setting the table faster. Your father just texted. They'll be here in 5 minutes. Get moving, girls. But no more than 2 minutes passed before the doorbell rang. The daughters saw their father. He looked very embarrassed. A country woman in her mid-50s and a young man in his 30s, very thin and with a beard at least 6 inches long, entered the apartment with him. Simone and Zara looked at the newcomers with great surprise. Not only had they never met them, but they had also never heard of relatives with such an exotic appearance. Dahlia was the first to regain her composure. Come in, dear guests. Let me hug you at least. She warmly hugged Denise. Hello, Denise. I'm Dahlia. Please come into the living room. Girls, she turned to her daughters, show Aunt Denise where everything is, where to wash her hands, and where to get some water. Dahlia approached Devin and was struck by how much he looked like his father. Well, hello, my dear. Why are you so skinny? Don't worry, we'll fatten you up, my poor boy. She felt terribly sorry for this unfortunate person, whose life could have turned out differently if his father had behaved like a man from his birth. It's all right. Dahlia patted the young man on the shoulder. Dad will make up for lost time, and we'll help. Soon, everyone was seated at the table. All right, let me introduce you, Dahlia announced to her daughters. Please love and welcome your brother, Devin. The fork fell out of Simone's hand, but she didn't seem to notice. She stared intently at her brother. But how? When? Dad, why didn't we know anything? Simone had 1,000 questions she wanted answers to. Daughter, Dahlia sternly interrupted her. Let's skip the questions. I only want to say one thing. Better late than never. Thousands of children don't know their fathers. And Devin, though not right away, has a father who showed up. And believe me, Devin, he will be a good father to you. I already understand that, the young man said shyly, and Mom and I are grateful for what Dad is doing for us. Simone suddenly stood up. She wasn't going to share her father with just anyone. Did you do a DNA test? She asked, looking angrily at her father. And how many other sons and daughters do you have, Daddy? Simone quickly left the room. Yes, Dahlia chuckled. Get used to it. Simone is like that. She attacks immediately when something is wrong, but she gets over it quickly. She'll be back in about 15 minutes and will apologize. Don't mind her. Not even 10 minutes passed before Simone returned. She stood by the table and, addressing everyone, said, "I apologize. I just didn't expect such mind-blowing news. I always thought I knew everything about my parents, but it turns out they still have secrets." She looked at her brother. "Devin, please don't take my outburst personally. It happens to me, so get used to it." She walked up to him, leaned in, hugged him, and then said, smiling, "If I'm being completely honest, Zara and I always wanted a brother, and Dad really wanted one too." She sat back down at the table and proposed a toast, to their childhood dreams finally coming true, and to her and her sister having a brother now. Dahlia looked after her guests. She sincerely wanted her husband's children to truly become family. But deep down, a little secret lived on. She was 100% sure that if Devin forgave his father, her daughters would have children. The next morning, Marcus drove his son to the clinic for an examination. The young man was admitted for 2 days, and on the third day, Marcus brought his son home. Everyone was surprised to learn that Devin did not have the disease he had been diagnosed with as a child, but the examination revealed a serious stomach ailment. "So, did they prescribe treatment for you?" Dahlia asked Devin. "Yes." The young man showed her a pharmacy bag with a bunch of medications. "Dad bought everything the doctor prescribed." "Well, now you need to seriously take care of your health," Dahlia said. "Only now, starting today, you'll be sleeping on the sofa in the small room. There's a balcony there. You'll like it." "I don't care where I sleep," Devin replied simply. But Dahlia did care. She was finally convinced that the blackened icon with the sorrowful face helped everyone who was near it, and she had already planned the cue. After Devin, she would place the icon in Simone's room, then in Zara's. The day before the anniversary celebration, Marcus's sister Clara arrived. "Clara, all right, peace?" her brother asked, tears in his eyes, after he brought her from the station and led her to the room where she began to settle in. "Marcus, I wasn't mad at you," Clara confessed. "I was mad at myself. I kept thinking, how could fate give me such a man? And he loved me, Marcus. He loved me deeply, and I couldn't keep him. It meant I wasn't worth anything." "Clara, are you crazy?" Marcus disagreed with his sister. "Remember high school? Half your classmates were in love with you. You shouldn't have given up. You're still beautiful now." "Don't be silly," Clara smiled. "You have to do everything at the right time. Fall in love, get married, and have children. But I gave in to my resentment, focused on self-pity, and ended up with nothing. I'm used to living alone now, Marcus, so don't feel sorry for me. Everything is fine with me." "Yes, I see. You look amazing. The years haven't touched you." "Loneliness has its advantages," his sister smiled. "No one gets on your nerves, and no one expects or demands anything from you. I live how I want." Zara entered the room. "Aunt Clara, we're celebrating the anniversary at a fancy restaurant. Mom asked if you have a dress. If not, come with us. We're going to the mall now to pick out an outfit for Aunt Denise. We could look for one for you at the same time." "Thank you, Zara, my dear," a smiling Clara replied. "But I brought my dress, so you go without me." 2 more days passed, and the celebration arrived. Exactly at 6 o'clock in the evening, a stunningly gorgeous Dahlia Everidge and her husband in a black tuxedo welcomed guests standing on the steps of the expensive restaurant. The guests were dressed to match the hosts. First to arrive were 2 of their couple friends, close friends of Marcus, then Dahlia's friend with her gentleman caller. Following them up the steps came a slightly odd couple. A beautiful red-haired woman who looked very awkward in a long, expensive dress and beautiful shoes with low heels. She was accompanied by a handsome young man. Dahlia was even flustered when she realized it was Denise with her son. Devin had shaved and gotten a haircut and now looked like a true gentleman. His unhealthy thinness was the only thing that slightly marred the picture. Dahlia thought she would take charge of his nutrition, while serious doctors were already handling his medical treatment. Marcus's sister, Clara, had also changed beyond recognition. Dahlia felt sorry for her once again. She was so smart and beautiful, yet she hadn't been able to settle down in her personal life. It seemed that some people were just destined for bad luck. Soon all the guests gathered and began congratulating Dahlia and Marcus. There were many kind words and wishes for happiness, but when Denise, Devon's mother, took the floor, all the guests held their breath. It was clear to everyone present that this woman came from a remote area where she had spent her whole life. Her unique dialect and strong, calloused hands were far more eloquent than the beautiful, expensive dress Dahlia had bought for her. "Good people, I want to say something," Denise began, encouraged by Simone's resolute gaze. "Marcus and Dahlia are extraordinary people, rare people. You don't meet people like them anymore. They hardly know my son and me, yet they treated us like the dearest and most beloved people. They bought us everything, explained everything, and taught us. We're just country folk, you see. We don't know city ways. I want to thank them, from myself and my son." The guests clapped heartily, touched by the woman's simplicity and sincerity. What she said sounded very moving, but Denise didn't think about sitting down. When the applause subsided, she continued, "I haven't said everything yet," she declared, causing laughter among the most easily amused listeners. "There was a time when I was very angry at Marcus and his family. I wished them various misfortunes and troubles. Well, I want to say that those feelings are gone now. Now I only wish Marcus, Dahlia, Simone, and Zara happiness, the greatest and truest happiness. May Dahlia have grandchildren soon, and may Marcus quickly open that branch office he's been trying to open for 2 years. And I wish all of you, dear guests, happiness too." Denise bowed, prompting a burst of applause and good-natured laughter. "My God, what happiness!" Dahlia leaned against her husband. "It's finally off my chest, Marcus. We did everything right. Since Denise said such kind words, everything will change, and we'll be rocking grandchildren soon. Mark my words." "You're becoming awfully superstitious," Marcus smiled, looking at his wife with love. "Not superstitious, but wise," Dahlia corrected him. "I've started to understand and feel more. Now I wonder, why didn't I understand and feel this earlier? Just promise me, Marcus, don't make such terrible mistakes again. And we need to seriously focus on Devon. It's not right to be so sick at his age. Until he's cured, he shouldn't even think about going back to the country town." Noticing a slight pause in the congratulations, the man of the hour, Marcus, took the floor. He stood up, raised a glass of champagne, and said, "I'm sure you all know who I'm about to talk about. My wonderful wife, of course. I must tell you that wives like my Dahlia can be counted on one hand. Tell me, what do women do when they find out their husbands have children on the side?" Marcus swept a teasing glance over the suddenly quiet guests. "You don't know. Well, I'll tell you. Wives start fighting, shouting that they're against children on the side. But my Dahlia scolded me with the worst words for not acknowledging my son when he was born, and she even reconciled me with my sister, whom I had offended 20 years ago. Now tell me, who has a wife like that?" The guests were silent. "To her," Marcus said proudly, raising his glass of champagne, "to you, my beautiful, beloved wife." After all the guests had spoken, the daughters took the floor. They showed a touching short film featuring video clips and photos of relatives taken on their wedding days. The carefully chosen music brought tears to the eyes of the most impressionable viewers. And then the dancing, entertainment, and fireworks began. The party was a success. It was well past midnight when the guests began to leave the restaurant. Marcus gathered all the household and relatives, and everyone headed to his house in a comfortable chartered van. "Dad, I don't want to go back to the country town." Devon, who was sitting next to him, suddenly said, "Do you think anyone would hire me for a job? I've only ever worked on the farm." "I'll hire you myself," Marcus smiled. "You're still young. If you like the company, you can enroll in school. I'll help you." Denise was sitting slightly apart from her son, but she saw him talking to his father about something important. She guessed they were talking about the future. She sighed sadly, realizing there was no place for her in that future. But she didn't want anything for herself. As long as her son was healthy and everything worked out for him, she now trusted Marcus and his family completely. It wasn't scary to leave her son in their care, and maybe now that she would be freer and not tied to her sick son, her life would change. After all, she wasn't 18 anymore, but she still wanted to be happy and loved. A day later, the guests began to leave Dahlia and Marcus's house. First, the daughters Simone and Zara left with their husbands. Then Denise, who left her son in his father's care. Then Clara packed her bags, happy to have reconciled with her brother. Dahlia and Marcus remained in the apartment with Devon. The hostess never ceased to be surprised by the young man. He was trusting and sincere, like a small child. Dahlia thought she needed to explain to him that the world was not as simple and beautiful as he imagined. Meanwhile, Devon was undergoing treatment and simultaneously settling into his new job. A month passed like this. One day, Simone called. She laughed joyfully when Dahlia answered the phone. "Mom, I'm calling from the clinic. You're going to be a grandma soon." Dahlia's heart swelled with joy and gratitude to everyone and everything. She had been heard. She had been helped. She knew for certain that she, too, would always help those close to her. "I'm really glad you're here and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, show me by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is. I'm so curious to know where all you wonderful people are tuning in from. If you want to support me a little extra, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories for you every single day. And now, 2 of my most popular stories will pop up on the screen so you can choose what to watch next.